My name is Rachel, and on a sunny Saturday afternoon in May, I watched through my car window as my father welcomed dozens of children into his backyard for a birthday party I wasn't invited to. The banner read, "Happy 8th birthday, Declan," in bright blue letters. My phone buzzed with a text from my stepmother, "Vanessa, sorry, family only today. You understand." I sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, and realized that after 12 years of being treated like a visitor in my own father's life, it was time to stop waiting for an invitation to matter. Everyone watching, drop a comment letting me know where you're from, and subscribe for part 2. I promise this story will show you exactly what happens when you decide to celebrate yourself after years of being left out in the cold. Before we dive back in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is something truly special I can't wait to share. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a cozy house on Maple Street where my parents, David and Ann, built what seemed like the perfect family. My childhood memories are filled with weekend hikes in Forest Park, family game nights, and my father teaching me how to ride a bike in our driveway. I was their only child, and for the first 14 years of my life, I was the center of their world. My father coached my soccer team, attended every school play, and had a special tradition of taking me to Powell's books every month to pick out any book I wanted. Then everything changed when I turned 14. My mother was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. The next 2 years were a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and watching my vibrant, energetic mother fade away. My father became distant during this time, burying himself in work as a civil engineer to avoid facing what was happening at home. I became my mother's primary caregiver, missing school to drive her to appointments, managing her medications, and holding her hand through the worst of it. My mother passed away 3 weeks after my 16th birthday. The funeral was on a cold January morning, and I remember my father standing at the grave site, looking lost and broken. I thought grief would bring us closer together, that we would support each other through the unbearable loss. Instead, my father seemed to retreat further into himself, spending longer hours at work and barely speaking to me when he was home. 6 months later, he introduced me to Vanessa. She was a divorced mother of a 5-year-old boy named Declan, working as a pharmaceutical sales representative. My father had met her at a medical conference, and apparently, they had been dating for 3 months before he told me. The first time I met her, she arrived at our house with Declan, a small, energetic child who immediately started running through the living room, touching my mother's belongings that I hadn't been able to pack away yet. "Declan, sweetheart, be careful," Vanessa cooed, not actually stopping him from knocking over a framed photo of my mother. My father just smiled at the chaos, seeming more alive than he'd been in months. The contrast was jarring. When I was grieving and struggling, I was met with silence and distance. This child's loud energy somehow brought my father back to life. They married 8 months later, a small ceremony at a vineyard in Newburgh that felt rushed and impersonal. I was asked to be a bridesmaid, standing awkwardly in a dress I didn't choose, watching my father marry a woman I barely knew. During the reception, my father gave a toast about new beginnings and finding light after darkness. He mentioned Declan 3 times. He didn't mention my mother once. He didn't mention me at all. The shift happened gradually at first, then all at once. Vanessa and Declan moved into our house, the house where I'd grown up, where my mother's presence still lingered in every room. Within months, Vanessa had redecorated, removing family photos that featured my mother and replacing them with new family portraits that prominently featured Declan. My father didn't object. When I asked if we could keep at least one photo of Mom in the living room, Vanessa suggested I keep them in my room, where they're more personal. My father's attention, which had once been wholly mine, was now completely focused on Declan. Every soccer practice, every school event, every minor accomplishment was celebrated with enthusiasm I hadn't seen since before my mother got sick. When Declan learned to tie his shoes, my father threw him a big boy party. When I got accepted to Reed College with a partial scholarship, my father said, "That's great, honey," without looking up from helping Declan with his homework. The birthday parties were perhaps the most painful symbol of this shift. For Declan's 6th birthday, they rented a bouncy castle and hired a magician. 30 kids from his kindergarten class filled our backyard. My father grilled burgers and played games, his laughter echoing through the yard in a way I hadn't heard since my mother was alive. For my 18th birthday, 2 months later, Vanessa bought a grocery store cake and they sang to me at dinner. Just the three of them and me. No friends invited, no celebration, no acknowledgement that this was a milestone birthday. "We're saving money for Declan's education fund," Vanessa explained when I looked disappointed. "You understand, right? College is expensive, and you're practically an adult now." For Declan's 7th birthday, they went even bigger. They rented out a local arcade, invited his entire first-grade class plus extended family, and gave him a Nintendo Switch. My father spent weeks planning the party, more excited than I'd seen him in years. For my 19th birthday, I was away at college. They sent a text, "Happy birthday. Call us when you can." I told myself it was natural. Declan was young, and young kids had big birthday parties. I was an adult in college, living my own life. But the exclusion went beyond birthdays. Family vacations were planned around Declan's schedule and interests. They spent spring break at Disneyland, summer vacation at a beach resort with a kids club, and winter break skiing at Mount Hood because Declan wanted to learn. When I came home for holidays, I felt like a guest in my own childhood home. Sunday dinners became another painful reminder. Vanessa would ask Declan about his day in minute detail, celebrating every small victory and discussing every minor conflict with intense interest. When conversation turned to me, it was surface level. "How's school?" "Fine." "That's good." Then back to Declan's upcoming field trip or soccer tournament. I graduated from Reed College with honors in environmental science. My father and Vanessa attended the ceremony but left immediately after, explaining that Declan had a playdate they couldn't miss. There was no graduation dinner, no celebration, no acknowledgement of 4 years of hard work. When I got my first job at an environmental consulting firm in Seattle, offering to help companies reduce their carbon footprint, my father's response was, "That's nice. Did we tell you Declan made the advanced reading group?" Despite all of this, I kept trying. I showed up for family dinners, sent Declan birthday gifts, and made efforts to connect with Vanessa. I told myself that families were complicated, that my father was doing his best, that I should be more understanding. Deep down, I was still that 14-year-old girl hoping her father would see her again the way he once did. Now, at 26 years old, I had built a successful career in Seattle, working as a senior environmental consultant. I had good friends, a nice apartment in Capitol Hill, and a life I was proud of. I visited Portland once a month, usually staying in a hotel rather than my father's house where I no longer felt welcome. Last month, I had called my father to tell him about a major achievement at work. I had just led a project that helped a major tech company reduce their emissions by 40%, and the story was being featured in a national environmental journal. "Dad, I wanted to tell you some exciting news," I began. "Hold on, Rachel," he interrupted. "Declan, buddy," inside voice, "please." "Sorry, what were you saying?" I could hear Vanessa in the background, laughing at something Declan said. "Never mind," I said. "It's not important." "Okay, sweetheart." "Hey, before you go, Declan's birthday is coming up. It's going to be big. I'll send you the details." I waited for that email with details. It never came. It took a lot of care and time to prepare and narrate this for you, so if you're enjoying it, a quick subscribe really helps and means the world to us. Alright, let's get back to it. After my mother died, I didn't just lose her, I lost my entire support system. My father retreated into his grief by disappearing into work and eventually into his new relationship with Vanessa. Meanwhile, I was left to navigate the impossible task of finishing high school while processing the death of the only parent who truly saw me. I threw myself into my studies with an intensity that surprised even my teachers. Environmental science became my refuge. While my father was building a new family, I was building a future. I spent weekends volunteering with the Columbia River Watershed Council, summers interning at local environmental nonprofits, and evenings researching colleges with the best sustainability programs. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, noticed my dedication. "Rachel, your grades are exceptional, and your volunteer work is impressive," she told me during my junior year. "Have you thought about applying for the Riverside Environmental Scholarship? It's a full ride to any Oregon university for students pursuing environmental careers." I spent 3 months on that application, pouring my heart into essays about my passion for conservation and my vision for sustainable urban development. I worked with Mrs. Patterson after school, refining every sentence, perfecting every argument. When I submitted it, I felt a flicker of hope, not just for the scholarship, but for recognition from my father. Maybe if I achieved something significant enough, he would notice me again. The night I found out I won the scholarship was supposed to be one of the proudest moments of my life. The award was worth $120,000, full tuition, room and board, and a stipend for research expenses at Reed College. Only 2 students in the entire state received it each year. I rushed home, acceptance letter clutched in my hands, bursting with excitement. I found my father in the living room, sitting on the floor building a Lego castle with Declan. Vanessa was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone. "Dad! I got it. I won the Riverside Scholarship." I practically shouted, waving the letter. He looked up briefly, a distracted smile on his face. "That's wonderful, Rachel. Really great." Then, turning back to Declan, "Buddy, hand me that blue piece." "Yes, that one." "Perfect." I stood there, the letter hanging limply in my hand. "Dad, it's a full scholarship. Only 2 people in Oregon get it. It means I can go to Reed without you having to pay anything." That's really good, honey," he said, not meeting my eyes. "That'll be helpful." Vanessa looked up from her phone. "Oh, that's nice, Rachel. Congratulations." "David, don't forget Declan has his parent-teacher conference tomorrow at 3. I marked it on the calendar, my father replied, his full attention on Vanessa and Declan. "Wouldn't miss it." He had missed my academic awards ceremony the previous week because Declan had a cold. I went to my room and called my best friend, Tara, crying so hard I could barely speak. He didn't even look at the letter, I sobbed. He just went back to playing Legos. "I'm so sorry, Rach," Tara said gently. "But you know what? You did this for you, not for him. And you're amazing." College became my escape and my salvation. At Reed, I was surrounded by people who valued intellectual curiosity and environmental passion. I joined every relevant club, took on leadership roles, and spent my summers doing field research instead of going home. When I did visit Portland, the visits grew shorter and more strained. During my sophomore year, I landed a prestigious internship with EcoVision Consulting, one of the top environmental firms in the Pacific Northwest. The internship was unpaid, but it offered invaluable experience working on corporate sustainability projects. There was just one problem: I needed money for living expenses in Seattle during the 3-month summer program. I called my father, hoping he might help bridge the gap. "Dad, I got accepted to this incredible internship," I explained. "It's with EcoVision. They work with major companies on climate strategy. It could really launch my career, but I need help with rent and expenses for the summer." There was a pause on the line. "How much are we talking about?" "Maybe $3,000. I've saved some, but not enough for 3 months in Seattle." Another pause. "Rachel, that's a lot of money. We're trying to save for Declan's future. Vanessa and I have been looking at private schools for him. Do you really need this internship? Can't you get a paying job instead?" I felt something crack inside my chest. "This could change my whole career trajectory, Dad. It's exactly what I need to build my resume." "I'm sorry, honey. Money's tight right now. Maybe next summer." I worked 3 part-time jobs that semester, as a barista, a research assistant, and a weekend tutor, saving every penny. I ate ramen for dinner most nights and walked instead of taking the bus. By May, I had scraped together enough to cover my expenses for the internship. The same week I left for Seattle, I saw on Facebook that my father and Vanessa had enrolled Declan in an elite private soccer academy that cost $5,000 per season. The internship changed my life. I worked under Dr. Amelia Chen, a brilliant strategist who saw potential in me that I hadn't seen in myself. "You have an unusual combination of technical knowledge and communication skills," she told me. "Most scientists can't talk to business leaders. You can bridge that gap." By the end of the summer, Ecovision offered me a part-time position during my senior year and a full-time job upon graduation. I accepted immediately. Over the next 4 years, I built something I was genuinely proud of. After graduating, I moved to Seattle permanently and threw myself into work with the same intensity I'd applied to everything since my mother's death. I worked on projects with Microsoft, Amazon, and Starbucks, helping them develop comprehensive sustainability strategies. By 24, I had been promoted to senior consultant. By 25, I was leading major accounts and speaking at environmental conferences. I bought my own apartment in Capitol Hill, a bright, modern space with large windows overlooking the city. Everything in it was mine, earned through my own hard work. Still, I kept trying with my father. I called every week, visited once a month, and sent thoughtful gifts for holidays. I told myself that relationships took effort, that I couldn't give up on the only parent I had left. Last year, when I turned 25, I treated myself to a small celebration with friends at a nice restaurant in Seattle. My father sent a text at 9 p.m., "Happy birthday, honey. Sorry we couldn't call earlier, Declan's soccer tournament ran late." There was no card, no gift, no phone call. 2 weeks later, Declan turned 7. I saw on Instagram that they had rented a private party room at a trampoline park, hired entertainment, and given him an electric scooter. The caption read, "Our special boy deserves the world. So blessed to celebrate our amazing son." I stared at those words for a long time. Our son. Not our children. Not our family. Their world had a population of 3, and I wasn't in it. 3 months ago, something shifted. I received a major promotion at work, Director of Sustainability Strategy, the youngest person to ever hold that position at Ecovision. It came with a significant raise, a corner office, and recognition in the industry. I called my father, hoping this achievement might finally break through. "Rachel, that's great," he said, sounding genuinely pleased for the first time in years. "Director, wow. That must come with a nice salary bump." "It does," I said cautiously, surprised by his interest. "That's wonderful, honey. Really wonderful. Hey, I'm glad you called, actually. Vanessa and I wanted to talk to you about something." His tone shifted, became more calculated. "We're planning something really special for Declan's 8th birthday. We want to create magical memories, you know? And we were thinking, with your new position and everything, maybe you'd like to contribute to making his day extra special?" I felt like I'd been slapped. "You want me to help pay for Declan's birthday party?" "Well, not pay for the whole thing," he said quickly. "Just contribute. Family helps family, right? We're thinking of renting out the West Side Community Center, hiring professional entertainers, maybe even a petting zoo. It's going to be around $6,000 total. If you could chip in $1,000 or $2,000, that would really help us give him the celebration he deserves." I sat in my office, looking out at the Seattle skyline, processing what I was hearing. My father, who had never helped fund my internship, who had sent a text for my 25th birthday, who had missed countless milestones in my life, was asking me to pay for his stepson's birthday party. "Let me think about it," I said quietly. Of course. No pressure. Just thought I'd ask since you're doing so well now." After we hung up, I sat motionless for 20 minutes. Then I opened my laptop and started planning something I should have done years ago. I was done asking for scraps from a table I'd never been invited to. It was time to set my own table. The day started like any other Saturday. I woke up in my Seattle apartment, made coffee, and settled into my usual weekend routine of catching up on work emails and planning the week ahead. It was May 18th, Declan's 8th birthday. I had known the date was coming, of course. My father had mentioned it multiple times during our phone conversations, each mention accompanied by hints about how expensive the party was going to be and how family contributions would be appreciated. I still hadn't given him an answer about contributing money. Every time he brought it up, I deflected with vague responses like, "I'll see what I can do," or "Let me check my budget." The truth was, I had no intention of funding a party I assumed I'd be invited to, even if I had to endure the usual awkwardness of being the outsider in my own father's family. What I didn't expect was to be excluded entirely. The first sign came on Friday evening. I was finishing up a client presentation when my phone buzzed with a text from my father, "Big day tomorrow. Declan is so excited. Weather looks perfect for the party." I typed back, "What time should I arrive? Do you need me to bring anything?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, "Actually, Rachel, this one is going to be pretty hectic with all the kids and activities. Probably better if you sit this one out. We'll do something with you separately." I stared at my phone screen, reading the message 3 times to make sure I understood correctly. I wasn't invited to my own brother's birthday party. Well, stepbrother, but still, family, according to my father whenever it suited him. My hands shook as I typed, "You're asking me not to come?" His response came quickly this time, "It's just going to be very crowded and chaotic. Mostly parents and kids from Declan's school. You'd be bored anyway. Let's plan a nice dinner next week, just us adults." I set my phone down and stared at my computer screen without seeing it. 26 years old, and I was still waiting for my father to choose me. Still hoping that maybe this time would be different. Still making excuses for why it was okay to be treated as an afterthought. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about all the times I'd been excluded, minimized, or forgotten. The pattern was so clear now, so undeniable, yet I had spent years making excuses for it. He's busy with work. He's trying to build a relationship with his new family. Declan is young and needs more attention. I'm an adult, I shouldn't need so much from him. But none of those excuses explained why I wasn't allowed at a family party. None of them justified being told I'd be bored at my own stepbrother's celebration. By Saturday morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to sit in my apartment feeling sorry for myself. I was going to see this party with my own eyes. I needed to understand the reality of my situation, not the version I'd been telling myself to make the exclusion hurt less. I drove the 3 hours from Seattle to Portland, leaving at 9 a.m. According to the social media posts Vanessa had been sharing all week, the party started at 2 p.m. at the Westside Community Center. I knew the place, a large facility with an outdoor area, indoor gymnasium, and multiple party rooms. My father had mentioned they'd rented the entire outdoor pavilion area. I parked across the street from the community center at 1:45 p.m., positioning my car where I could see the entrance and outdoor area clearly. I felt ridiculous, like I was conducting some kind of surveillance operation on my own family, but I needed to see this for myself. The party setup was elaborate. 2 large bounce houses dominated the lawn, their bright colors visible even from my car. A face painting station was set up under a tent, along with what appeared to be a cotton candy machine and a popcorn cart. Tables were arranged with blue and silver decorations, Declan's favorite colors. A banner stretched across the pavilion entrance, "Happy 8th birthday, Declan." At 2 p.m., cars started arriving. I watched families pour out, children running toward the bounce houses while parents carried wrapped gifts to a designated table that was already overflowing. My father stood at the entrance, greeting everyone with enthusiastic handshakes and hugs. He was wearing the same blue polo shirt I'd given him for Father's Day 2 years ago, the one he'd said he loved but I'd never seen him wear. Vanessa worked the crowd like a politician, her blonde hair perfectly styled, moving from group to group with practiced charm. She wore a sash that read "Birthday Boy's Mom" in glittery letters. Declan raced around in a superhero cape, his face already painted like Spider-Man. I counted the guests as they arrived. 30 children, at least 40 adults. I recognized some faces from my father's Facebook posts, Vanessa's sisters and their families, neighbors from their street, parents from Declan's school. My father's brother, Uncle Tim, arrived with his wife and 3 kids. Tim had been at my college graduation, one of the few family members who'd made the effort. Now he was here, carrying a large gift bag, laughing at something my father said. The party was in full swing by 2:30. A professional entertainer arrived, a man in a colorful costume who began organizing games and activities. The sound of children's laughter carried across the street to where I sat, a bystander to a celebration I'd been deliberately excluded from. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa, of all people. I opened it, my heart pounding. The message contained a single photo, the entire party gathered around a massive 3-tiered birthday cake, Declan in the center beaming at the camera. The caption read, "Family celebration for our special boy. So grateful for everyone who makes our lives complete." Below the photo, her message, "Sorry, family only today. You understand." I stared at that message, at the photo showing dozens of people who apparently qualified as family, while I, his biological daughter, did not. Uncle Tim was family. Vanessa's hairdresser, whom I'd spotted in the crowd, was apparently family. The parents of Declan's classmates were family. But I was not. Something inside me broke, not dramatically, but quietly, like a cable that had been fraying for years finally snapping under too much weight. I looked at the message again. You understand. And suddenly, I did understand. I understood that I had spent 12 years hoping my father would wake up and remember he had a daughter who existed before Vanessa and Declan entered his life. I understood that no amount of achievement, visits, or effort on my part would change the fundamental truth. I didn't fit into the family narrative they'd created. I wasn't forgotten. I wasn't overlooked. I was deliberately excluded. The worst part wasn't even the exclusion itself. It was the casual cruelty of that text message, sent while I sat across the street watching the party unfold. Vanessa knew I cared. She knew this would hurt. And she sent it anyway, with that dismissive, "You understand," as if my exclusion was perfectly reasonable. I took a screenshot of the message. Then I scrolled back through my phone, looking at the pattern of communication from my father over the past year. Months of conversations where he asked about my life only as a transition to talking about Declan. Cancelled plans because of Declan's activities. Forgotten holidays and birthdays. And then, 3 months ago, the request for money to fund this very party I was now forbidden from attending. I opened my banking app and looked at my savings account. Years of careful financial planning had built a comfortable cushion. The promotion had accelerated that growth significantly. I had more than enough resources to do something I'd been considering but hadn't had the courage to execute. Sitting in that car, watching my father celebrate a child who had displaced me completely, I made a series of decisions with crystal clarity. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to make a scene or demand explanations. I wasn't going to send a hurt message or try to make them feel guilty. I was going to throw my own party. Not a sad, defiant counter-celebration. Not a petty response to their exclusion. But a genuine, joyful event celebrating myself and the people who actually valued my presence in their lives. I opened my notes app and started planning. My birthday wasn't until September, 4 months away. But why wait? Why did celebrations need to be tied to specific dates? I had plenty to celebrate right now: my promotion, my success, my independence, my survival despite being emotionally abandoned by the one parent I had left. As I sat there planning, my father appeared in my line of sight, hoisting Declan onto his shoulders while everyone sang, "Happy Birthday." The image should have made me cry. A year ago, it would have. 6 months ago, it might have. But now, watching him be the father to Declan that he'd stopped being to me, I felt something different. Not quite anger, not quite sadness. It was more like acceptance mixed with resolve. I had spent over a decade trying to earn my way back into my father's attention. I had achieved, succeeded, and accomplished, all while telling myself it was for me, but secretly hoping each milestone would make him see me again. I was done performing for an audience that had left the theater. I took one last look at the party, at the bounce houses and the cake and the family I no longer belonged to, and started my car. I had a celebration to plan. A real one. For people who actually wanted me there. The 3-hour drive back to Seattle felt different than the drive down. I spent it on hands-free calls, reaching out to friends and colleagues. My best friend Tara answered on the second ring. "Rachel. What's up? I thought you were in Portland for your brother's party." "Change of plans," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "How do you feel about helping me plan a party?" "Always." "What's the occasion?" "Everything," I said. "I want to celebrate everything." By the time I pulled into my apartment parking garage in Seattle, I had made 15 phone calls and my plan was already taking shape. Tara had immediately understood what I was doing without me having to explain the emotional reasoning behind it. "It's about damn time," she'd said fiercely. "I've been waiting years for you to stop giving them chances they don't deserve." I walked into my apartment, dropped my keys on the counter, and opened my laptop. The anger that had been simmering during the drive had crystallized into something more productive: determination. I wasn't acting out of spite or revenge. I was reclaiming something that had been taken from me, the right to celebrate my own life surrounded by people who genuinely cared. First, I needed a venue. Not just any venue, but somewhere meaningful. I thought about the places in Seattle that had become important to me over the past few years: the coffee shop where I'd written my graduate thesis, the waterfront where I walked when I needed to think, the museum where I'd had my first date with my ex-boyfriend James. Then it hit me: the botanical gardens at the University of Washington. I had discovered the gardens during my first month in Seattle, when I was lonely and overwhelmed by the move. Walking through the meticulously maintained paths, surrounded by plants from around the world, had become my meditation practice. It was where I went to celebrate good news, process bad news, and simply exist without the weight of expectations. I pulled up their event rental page. The gardens offered private rentals for special events. The photos showed a beautiful pavilion surrounded by Japanese maples, with a view of the koi pond and stone garden. The capacity was up to 50 guests. The rental fee was $2,500 for a Saturday evening, including tables, chairs, and a dedicated event coordinator. I filled out the inquiry form immediately, requesting availability for the last Saturday in May, exactly 2 weeks away. Ambitious, maybe impossible, but I'd built a career on meeting impossible deadlines. While I waited for a response, I created a guest list. This part was surprisingly emotional. I started writing down names and realized how many genuine relationships I'd built in Seattle, people who had supported me, celebrated with me, and valued my presence without me having to beg for it. Tara, obviously. My mentor Dr. Amelia Chen from Ecovision. My colleague Brandon, who had become one of my closest friends through late nights working on difficult projects. My former roommate Lisa and her husband Kevin. The book club I'd joined last year, 6 women who met monthly to discuss environmental literature and had become a chosen family of sorts. My gym trainer Marcus, who had helped me work through stress and anxiety through kickboxing. James, my ex-boyfriend, with whom I'd remained friends after our amicable breakup. I kept writing. Colleagues from work who had become genuine friends. Neighbors from my apartment building who invited me to their dinner parties. A professor from Reed College who still mentored me remotely. The barista at my regular coffee shop who knew my order and always asked about my week. By the time I finished, I had 43 names. 43 people who had shown up for me in various ways over the past few years. Not because they were obligated by blood or marriage, but because they chose to. I looked at that list and felt something shift in my chest. I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. I had been so focused on the family that didn't want me that I'd almost missed the community that did. My phone rang, a Seattle number I didn't recognize. I answered to find Jenny, the event coordinator from the Botanical Gardens, on the line. "Hi Rachel, I got your inquiry. I have to say, 2 weeks is extremely short notice for a Saturday evening rental," she began, and my heart sank. "However, we actually just had a cancellation for that exact date this morning. A wedding party had to postpone." If you can commit today with a deposit, the space is yours. I didn't hesitate. I'll commit right now. What do you need from me? 30 minutes later, I had wired the deposit and received confirmation. I had a venue. Now I needed everything else. I opened a new spreadsheet, my preferred method for organizing complex projects, and created categories: venue, check; catering, entertainment, invitations, decorations, photography, budget. For budget, I created a separate calculation. My savings account held $47,000, carefully accumulated over years of frugal living and smart investing. My new salary meant I was now saving an additional $3,000 per month after all expenses. I could afford to spend significantly on this event without jeopardizing my financial security. But how much did I want to spend? I thought about my father's party for Declan, the $6,000 extravaganza funded partially by the money he'd asked me to contribute. I thought about my 25th birthday text message. I thought about every forgotten milestone and every dismissed achievement. I set my budget at $12,000. Double what they'd spent on Declan. Not to compete, but to mark the importance of what I was doing. This was an investment in myself, in my healing, in my future. Next, catering. I wanted food that reflected who I was, not what was expected at a typical party. I contacted Harvest Moon Catering, a sustainable farm-to-table company I'd worked with on a corporate event. They specialized in locally sourced, environmentally conscious cuisine, perfectly aligned with my values. The owner, Carmen, remembered me. Rachel. How's the sustainability world treating you? Really well, actually. So well that I'm throwing a celebration and I want your food there. We discussed options. Carmen suggested a sophisticated cocktail reception rather than a sit-down dinner, more conducive to mingling and celebrating. Past hors d'oeuvres, a carved salmon station, a local cheese and charcuterie display, seasonal salads, and a dessert bar featuring treats from a woman-owned bakery in Ballard. And we should do a signature cocktail, Carmen suggested. Something that represents you. I thought about it. Something with gin and botanical elements. Maybe lavender or rosemary. And a mocktail version that's equally special. I love it. The garden path, gin, elderflower, fresh lemon, rosemary, and a splash of Prosecco. And for the mocktail, we'll do a lavender lemonade with sparkling water and fresh herbs. The catering quote came to $3,200 for 50 guests. I approved it immediately. Entertainment was next. I didn't want a DJ or dancing, this wasn't that kind of party. But I wanted music. I reached out to a string quartet I'd heard playing at a fundraiser last year. They were available and quoted $800 for 3 hours. Done. For invitations, I considered my options. Traditional paper invitations would take too long with my tight timeline. But I didn't want just a Facebook event either. I wanted something that conveyed the significance of the occasion. I hired a graphic designer from Fiverr, explaining what I needed, a digital invitation that was elegant but personal, celebrating achievement and community. She delivered options within 24 hours. I chose a design featuring watercolor botanical illustrations with gold accents. The text read: Rachel Winters invites you to celebrate life, success, and chosen family an evening at the UW Botanical Gardens Saturday, May 31st, 7 p.m. Cocktail attire RSVP by May 25th. At the bottom, in smaller text, your presence in my life is the greatest gift. No other gifts necessary. I sent the invitation Sunday morning via email, each one personalized with a short note explaining why that person's presence mattered to me. For Tara, you've been my constant through every high and low. I can't imagine celebrating without you. For Dr. Chin, you saw potential in me when I couldn't see it myself. Thank you for being an incredible mentor and friend. For Brandon, thanks for making work feel less like work and more like collaboration with a friend. The responses started coming in within hours. Every single person said yes. Several people called me, their voices warm with excitement and curiosity. Tara showed up at my apartment Sunday evening with a bottle of wine. Okay, I know you said no gifts, but tell me you're letting me help plan this thing," she demanded. We spent the evening refining details. Tara had connections with a photographer who specialized in event coverage, her cousin Maya, who agreed to document the evening for $600. She also suggested we create a photo booth area with Polaroid cameras where guests could take pictures and leave messages in a guest book. "This is about capturing joy," Tara said. "Documenting that you're surrounded by people who love you. Future Rachel needs to be able to look back and see proof." For decorations, I wanted simple elegance. The gardens were already beautiful, I just needed to enhance them. I ordered string lights to create ambience as evening fell, small lanterns for the tables, and simple floral centerpieces from a local florist who specialized in seasonal, sustainable arrangements. Monday at work, I told Dr. Chin about the party. She looked at me with those sharp, knowing eyes that had always seen through my carefully constructed professional facade. "This is about your father's party, isn't it?" she asked gently. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Good," she said firmly. "Rachel, I've watched you build an incredible career while carrying the weight of feeling unwanted by your own family. It's time you celebrated yourself the way you deserve. And I'm honored to be invited." Tuesday, I received an email from my father. "Hey honey, haven't heard from you since before Declan's party. Everything okay? We still need to schedule that dinner." I stared at the email for a long time. He had no idea I'd driven to Portland. No idea I'd sat across the street watching his family-only celebration. No idea that Vanessa's text message had shattered whatever remaining hope I'd been holding on to. I could respond with anger, explain what they'd done, demand accountability. Or I could simply move forward with my own life. I typed back, "Everything's fine. I've been busy with a project. I'll be in touch when things slow down." Short, polite, distant. The same tone he'd used with me for years. Wednesday, Vanessa posted photos from Declan's party on Facebook. Dozens of images showing the elaborate celebration, the happy family, the perfect day. In her caption, she wrote, "So blessed to have such amazing family and friends who made Declan's day magical. This is what love looks like." I scrolled through every photo. My father appeared in at least 20 of them, always smiling, always engaged, always present in a way he hadn't been for me in over a decade. Instead of the pain I expected, I felt something else, relief. The scales had finally fallen from my eyes completely. I could see the situation with perfect clarity, unmarred by hope or denial. Thursday, I confirmed final details with all my vendors. The menu was finalized, the quartet had their playlist, the photographer had her shot list, the decorations were ordered. Friday evening, Tara came over to help me choose an outfit. I owned plenty of professional clothes, but I didn't want to look like I was going to a business function. I wanted to look like myself, confident, accomplished, celebrating. We settled on a deep emerald green dress I'd bought on impulse 6 months ago but never worn. It was elegant but not stuffy, with a flowing skirt that would move beautifully in the gardens. Tara lent me a pair of gold earrings that caught the light perfectly. "You look like someone who knows her worth," Tara said, zipping up the back. Saturday morning, the day of my celebration, I woke up with butterflies in my stomach. Not anxiety exactly, but anticipation mixed with something that felt like hope. My phone showed a text from my father, sent at 7 a.m., thinking we should do that dinner next week. "Vanessa wants to show you pictures from Declan's party. Tuesday work for you?" I set the phone down without responding. I had my own party to prepare for. The morning of my celebration, I woke up at 6:30 without an alarm, my mind already racing through final details. Sunlight streamed through my bedroom window, and I could see clear blue skies. The weather forecast had promised a perfect evening, and it looked like nature was delivering. I made coffee and sat on my balcony, looking out over Capitol Hill as the city woke up. In a few hours, I would be surrounded by people who had chosen to be part of my life. People who didn't need blood ties or legal obligations to show up for me. The thought filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. My phone buzzed constantly throughout the morning. Text messages from guests expressing excitement, asking if they could bring anything, sharing how much they were looking forward to the evening. Each message was a small affirmation that I mattered to these people. Brandon sent, "Just finished wrapping your gift even though you said no gifts. You can't stop me. This is happening." Lisa wrote, "Kevin and I are so excited. He's been talking all week about finally meeting the famous Rachel's friends. You've built something really special here." Dr. Chen's message was characteristically direct, arriving at 6:45 to help with any last-minute setup. No arguments. At noon, Tara arrived with her cousin Maya, the photographer, and we drove to the gardens together to oversee the setup. The event coordinator Jenny met us at the pavilion, and I felt my breath catch when I saw the space. The afternoon sun filtered through the Japanese maples, casting dappled shadows across the pavilion. The tables were arranged in an elegant semicircle around the central area, each covered with cream-colored linens. The floral centerpieces had arrived, simple arrangements of seasonal blooms in muted colors that complemented rather than competed with the natural beauty surrounding us. "The catering team will arrive at 5 to set up the food stations," Jenny explained. "The string quartet gets here at 6:30 to do a sound check. You requested the lights to come on at sunset, which should be around 8:15 tonight." Carmen from Harvest Moon arrived right on schedule, her team efficiently transforming one side of the pavilion into an elegant food service area. She showed me the menu cards she'd created, printed on recycled paper with the same botanical design as my invitations. "I added one surprise," she said with a smile, leading me to a small table near the entrance. On it sat a stunning 3-tiered display of champagne coupes, ready for the signature cocktails. Next to it was a beautifully hand-lettered sign, "The Garden Path, celebrating Rachel's journey." I felt unexpected tears prick my eyes. "Carmen, this is beautiful. You deserve beautiful," she said simply. "You've spent years helping companies become better versions of themselves. Tonight is about celebrating the amazing person you already are." By 6 o'clock, everything was in place. The string quartet arrived and began setting up near the koi pond. The photographer Maya was testing angles and lighting. Tara had arranged the Polaroid photo booth area with props and a guest book she'd somehow found time to create, a leather-bound journal with "Rachel's Garden Party" embossed on the cover. I went to the restroom to change into my dress. Standing in front of the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because I looked happy. Genuinely, deeply happy in a way I hadn't seen in my own reflection for years. Tara knocked on the door. "You almost ready?" "Guests start arriving in 30 minutes and Dr. Chen is already here, setting up a toast station because apparently she decided we needed one." I laughed and opened the door. Tara's eyes widened. "Oh, Rach. You look absolutely stunning." "I feel different," I admitted. "Like something fundamental has shifted." "That's because you're finally putting yourself first," Tara said. "It looks good on you." We walked back to the pavilion together, and I saw Dr. Chen had indeed created an impromptu toast station with index cards and pens. A sign read, "Share a memory, offer a wish, or simply say what Rachel means to you." I thought people might want to say things but feel shy about public speaking, Dr. Chen explained. This way they can contribute in whatever way feels comfortable. The quartet began playing softly, a mix of classical pieces and modern songs arranged for strings. The music floated through the gardens, creating an atmosphere that felt both celebratory and intimate. At 7 o'clock sharp, the first guests arrived. Brandon came with his girlfriend Sarah, whom I'd met several times at work events. He immediately broke the "no gifts" rule, handing me a wrapped package. "It's not expensive," he said. "Just something I thought you'd appreciate." I opened it to find a beautifully framed photograph, one I recognized from a company retreat 6 months ago. It showed me leading a workshop, caught mid-laugh at something a participant had said. I looked confident, engaged, fully myself. "You looked so completely in your element," Brandon explained. "I wanted you to have a reminder of how you look when you're doing what you love." More guests streamed in. The book club women arrived together, immediately gravitating to the champagne station and exclaiming over the botanical details. My former professor Dr. Harrison made the trip from Portland, bringing his wife Margaret. Rachel, this is exquisite, he said, looking around. You've created something that reflects exactly who you are, thoughtful, elegant, and deeply connected to the natural world. Lisa and Kevin arrived with their 2 young daughters, who were immediately enchanted by the koi pond. My neighbor Mrs. Patterson from the apartment building came dressed in vintage cocktail attire, looking like she'd stepped out of a 1950s movie. James, my ex-boyfriend, arrived with his new girlfriend Claire, which I'd specifically told him was welcome. We'd maintained a genuine friendship after our breakup, built on mutual respect and the recognition that sometimes good people aren't right for each other romantically. Rachel, Claire. Claire, Rachel, James said with a grin. The woman who taught me what healthy boundaries look like. Claire laughed. He's told me so much about you. Thank you for being cool about me crashing your party. Any friend of James is welcome here, I said honestly. Besides, the more the merrier. By 7:30, all 43 guests had arrived. The pavilion hummed with conversation and laughter. Carmen's team circulated with trays of hors d'oeuvres, wild mushroom crostini, smoked salmon on cucumber rounds, prosciutto-wrapped asparagus. The signature cocktails were a hit, with guests remarking on the beautiful presentation and perfect flavor balance. Maya moved through the crowd with her camera, capturing candid moments. The Polaroid booth was already generating laughs as people posed with props and wrote messages in the guest book. I moved from group to group, feeling overwhelmed by the warmth of it all. These people had rearranged their Saturday evenings to celebrate with me. They'd dressed up, brought thoughtful gifts despite my requests, and shown up with genuine enthusiasm. My gym trainer Marcus pulled me aside. I have to tell you, when I got your invitation, I was surprised to be included. I mean, I'm just your trainer. You're not just anything, I corrected him. You helped me process years of stress and anxiety. You created a space where I could be strong. That matters. At 8 o'clock, Dr. Chen gently tapped a glass to get everyone's attention. I'm not much for long speeches, she began, but I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge why we're all here. Rachel, you invited us to celebrate life, success, and chosen family. What you may not realize is how much each of us feels privileged to be chosen by you. People nodded and murmured agreement. Dr. Chen continued, in the 5 years I've known Rachel, I've watched her build an extraordinary career while carrying burdens most of us couldn't imagine. She's never asked for special treatment or sympathy. She's simply showed up, day after day, doing exceptional work while being an exceptional human being. Tonight, we get to show up for her. So please, raise your glasses. Everyone lifted their champagne coupes. Dr. Chen's voice was strong and clear. To Rachel, may you always know how valued, how appreciated, and how loved you are. To Rachel, the crowd echoed, and I felt tears streaming down my face despite my attempts to maintain composure. Tara appeared at my elbow with a napkin. Happy tears are allowed, she whispered. As the sun began to set, the string lights automatically illuminated, transforming the pavilion into something magical. The quartet shifted to more upbeat pieces, and people naturally began moving closer together, forming smaller conversation clusters. Brandon started a trend by reading his card from the toast station aloud. Rachel taught me that success isn't about being the loudest voice in the room, but about doing excellent work with integrity. She makes everyone around her better. Others followed. Lisa read, to the friend who shows up with solutions and snacks when life gets hard, thank you for teaching me what real friendship looks like. Marcus shared, Rachel proves that strength comes in many forms, and asking for help is one of them. The professor's wife Margaret, whom I'd only met briefly once before, read, sometimes the family we choose loves us better than the family we're born into. Rachel, you've built a beautiful chosen family here. That last comment hit me hard. I looked around at the faces illuminated by string lights and sunset, people laughing, sharing stories, celebrating together. This was my family. Not perfect, not related by blood, but genuine and present and real. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. A text from Vanessa, your father is concerned he hasn't heard from you. Please respond when you can. Also, we're free Tuesday for that dinner. I looked at the message, then at the celebration happening around me. The contrast was so stark it was almost funny. Here I was, surrounded by dozens of people who had enthusiastically shown up to celebrate me, while my father and stepmother were scheduling obligatory dinners and demanding responses on my timeline. I typed back quickly, I'm at an event tonight. I'll reach out next week to discuss scheduling. Then I put my phone away and returned to my party. Carmen announced that dinner was served, and people moved toward the food stations, exclaiming over the beautiful presentation and delicious smells. As I stood in line for salmon, James appeared beside me. This is really something, Rachel. I've been to a lot of parties, but this feels different. More intentional. That's because it is, I said. Every person here was chosen deliberately. Every detail reflects who I actually am, not who anyone thinks I should be. I'm proud of you, he said simply. Not many people have the courage to celebrate themselves this way. After dinner, as the sky darkened completely and stars became visible above the trees, people naturally migrated toward the koi pond. Someone suggested making wishes, and soon everyone was tossing coins into the water, sharing their hopes and dreams. Dr. Harrison found me standing slightly apart from the group, watching the scene. You know what strikes me about tonight, he said. Everyone here is genuinely enjoying themselves. That's rare at events. Usually people are checking their watches or making small talk out of obligation. But look, he gestured at the crowd, people are staying, engaging, connecting. You've created community, Rachel. That's a remarkable gift. At 10 o'clock, the quartet played their final song, a beautiful arrangement of Here Comes the Sun. As the last notes faded, people began reluctantly gathering their things, exchanging contact information, and making plans to see each other again. The guests departed slowly, each person stopping to hug me and express gratitude for the evening. Thank you for including me in your chosen family, more than one person said. By 11, only Tara, Dr. Chin, Maya the photographer, and I remained. We sat at one of the tables, tired but content, looking at the Polaroids and reading the messages in the guest book. Listen to this one, Tara said, reading aloud. Tonight I witnessed what happens when someone decides they're worthy of celebration. Rachel, you've inspired me to stop waiting for permission to value myself. Thank you. Dr. Chen flipped through Maya's digital camera, reviewing the evening's photos. These are extraordinary. Rachel, you need to see this. She showed me image after image, people laughing, embracing, deep in conversation. And in many of them, I appeared genuinely joyful, more relaxed and happy than I'd seen myself in years. That's the real you, Dr. Chen said softly. The person you become when you're not trying to earn love from people who refuse to give it. We helped pack up the final details, thanked Jenny and the remaining catering staff, and walked slowly through the now quiet gardens toward the parking lot. In my car, alone finally, I sat for a moment before starting the engine. My phone showed 3 more texts from my father, increasingly annoyed that I wasn't responding immediately. I turned it off completely. Tonight wasn't about them. Tonight was about me, and the incredible community I'd built, and the realization that I'd been looking for validation in all the wrong places. I had everything I needed. I always had. Sunday morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing incessantly. I'd turned it back on before bed and now faced a barrage of messages. Most were from party guests, sending thank you texts and photos from the evening. The book club had created a group chat called Garden Party Magic, where they were already planning our next gathering. Brandon had sent a series of photos he'd taken on his phone, captioned, Best Saturday Night in Months. But mixed among the warm messages were 7 texts and 2 voicemails from my father. The texts progressed from mildly annoyed to outright angry. The final one, sent at 10 p.m. the previous night, read, This is unacceptable, Rachel. When your father asks you to respond, you respond. Call me immediately. I made coffee and listened to the voicemails while sitting on my balcony. The first was brief, Rachel, it's Dad. We need to talk about next week's dinner. Call me back today. The second, left 3 hours later, had a sharper edge. Rachel, I don't know what's going on with you, but this silent treatment is childish. Vanessa is concerned about your behavior. We need to discuss this as a family. As a family. The words would have hurt a week ago. Now they just felt absurd. I deleted the voicemails and opened my laptop instead. Maya had already uploaded a preview gallery of photos from the party. I scrolled through them slowly, remembering each moment. There was Dr. Chen's toast, captured mid-speech with everyone's faces turned toward her in rapt attention. There was the book club clustered around the Polaroid booth, laughing at their poses. There was Brandon and Sarah by the koi pond, deep in conversation with James and Claire. And there were dozens of photos of me, genuinely smiling, laughing, engaged. In one image, I was hugging Tara, both of us caught mid-laugh about something. In another, I was listening intently to Dr. Harrison, my expression thoughtful and present. In a third, I stood slightly apart from the crowd, surveying the party with a look of contentment I barely recognized on my own face. This was what happiness looked like on me. After so many years, I'd almost forgotten. Around noon, my phone rang. My father's name appeared on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called back immediately. And again. On the fourth call, I answered. Hello, Dad. Finally. His voice was tight with irritation. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. What's going on? I was busy yesterday. I had an event. What kind of event is more important than responding to your father? I took a slow breath, remembering Dr. Chen's words about boundaries. I hosted a celebration at the Botanical Gardens. 43 friends came to spend the evening with me. There was a pause. A celebration? For what? For my promotion. For my life. For the community I've built here in Seattle. I kept my voice calm and factual. It was a really beautiful evening. You threw yourself a party? He sounded genuinely confused. That's a bit self-indulgent, don't you think? Something in his tone, the casual dismissal, the implication that celebrating myself was somehow inappropriate, triggered a clarity I'd been building toward for weeks. No, Dad. I don't think it's self-indulgent to celebrate my achievements with people who care about me. Well, it would have been nice to be invited to this party. His voice shifted to injured. We're your family, Rachel. Are you? The question came out before I could stop it. Because family doesn't usually get excluded from birthday parties with a text saying, family only. Silence on the other end. Then, what are you talking about? Declan's party. 2 weeks ago. The one Vanessa texted me about, telling me I wasn't invited because it was family only. Rachel, that party was chaotic with dozens of kids. You would have been bored. I drove to Portland that day, I interrupted. I sat across the street and watched the whole thing. I saw Uncle Tim there. I saw Vanessa's hairdresser. I saw at least 60 people who apparently qualified as family while I, your daughter, did not. Another long silence. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted to defensive. You're taking this out of context. That was Declan's day, and we wanted to keep it focused on him. You asked me to help pay for that party, I said quietly. 3 months ago, you called to tell me about my promotion, and within 2 minutes you were asking me to contribute $1,000 to Declan's birthday celebration. A celebration I wasn't even invited to attend. That's not, you're twisting things. Am I? Let me ask you something, Dad. When was my last birthday? What? When was my last birthday? What day, what month? Silence. It was September 23rd. I turned 26. You sent a text at 9 p.m. that said, Happy birthday, call us when you can. I called 3 days later and you talked for 20 minutes about Declan's soccer tournament. My voice remained steady, almost eerily calm. Do you remember what you got me for my 25th birthday? Rachel, I don't see what this has to do with. Nothing. You got me nothing. You sent a text. But for Declan's 7th birthday, you spent $6,000 on a party at an arcade. I'm not saying a 7-year-old doesn't deserve a nice birthday. I'm saying your 25-year-old daughter deserved more than a text message. You're an adult, Rachel. Adults don't need birthday parties. You're right, I cut him off. I don't need birthday parties from you. I don't need anything from you anymore. That's what I realized last night, surrounded by people who showed up enthusiastically to celebrate me. I don't need to keep hoping you'll suddenly remember you have a daughter who existed before Vanessa and Declan. This is about Vanessa. Rachel, I thought you were mature enough to handle me remarrying. This isn't about you remarrying. This is about you erasing me from your life and expecting me to be grateful for whatever scraps of attention you occasionally toss my way. I was standing now, pacing my balcony. I invested 12 years trying to earn my way back into your life. Achieving, succeeding, visiting, calling, being understanding about every cancelled plan and forgotten milestone. And you know what I finally realized? It was never about what I did or didn't do. You chose your new family, and I was never going to fit into that picture no matter how hard I tried. You're being incredibly unfair. Am I? Let me tell you what happened after Mom died, from my perspective. I was 16 years old, and I lost both my parents. One to cancer and one to grief and avoidance. I took care of Mom during her final months while you buried yourself in work. I planned her funeral because you couldn't function. And then, 6 months later, you introduced me to your new girlfriend and her son, and suddenly you could function again. Suddenly you could be present and engaged and loving, just not with me. Rachel, that's not how it was. Then how was it, Dad? Explain to me how I'm misunderstanding the situation. Explain the pattern I've watched for 12 years. Explain why you attended Declan's kindergarten graduation but left my college graduation early for his playdate. Explain why you asked me to fund his birthday party but wouldn't help with my unpaid internship that launched my career. Explain that text message from Vanessa, family only, you understand. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had changed from defensive to something harder. What do you want from me, Rachel? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry you feel neglected. I'm sorry I haven't been the perfect father since your mother died. I did the best I could while dealing with my own grief and trying to build a new life. Maybe I made mistakes, but I won't be guilt-tripped by my adult daughter who's apparently keeping score of every slight. The words landed like a slap, but instead of pain, I felt a strange sense of liberation. This was who he was. Not the father from my childhood memories, but the man he'd become, someone who could dismiss 12 years of emotional neglect as keeping score. I'm not asking for an apology, Dad. I'm not asking for anything anymore. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So what, you're cutting me off? Over a birthday party invitation? I'm setting boundaries. I'm no longer going to prioritize a relationship with people who clearly don't prioritize me. You want to schedule a dinner? Sure, we can do that. But I'm not going to rearrange my life around your availability anymore. I'm not going to sit through meals where you talk about Declan for 2 hours and ask me 3 polite questions. I'm not going to contribute financially to celebrations I'm not welcome to attend. I'm not going to keep trying to earn a place in your life that you've made clear doesn't exist. You're overreacting. I'm reacting appropriately to years of being treated as an obligation rather than a daughter. And I'm done. There was a long silence. Then, in a colder voice than I'd ever heard him use with me, fine. If that's how you want it. Don't expect me to come running when you decide you need your family again. I have a family, Dad. I had 43 of them at my party last night. People who showed up enthusiastically, who celebrated me genuinely, who value my presence in their lives. That's what family looks like. Those aren't family, Rachel. Those are just friends. Friends who treat me better than you have in over a decade. I'll take that kind of just friends over blood relations who can't remember my birthday. Another long pause. I think we both need to cool down. We can discuss this more rationally later. There's nothing to discuss. I'm not angry, Dad. I'm just done hoping for something you're not capable of giving. We can have a cordial, distant relationship if you want. Holiday cards, occasional check-ins, surface-level pleasantries. But I'm not going to keep breaking my own heart trying to be seen by someone who's chosen not to see me. Your mother would be disappointed in how you're handling this. The comment was designed to hurt, and a year ago it might have worked. But now, I thought about my mother, her strength during her illness, her grace, her insistence that I build my own life and not sacrifice myself for others. Actually, I think Mom would be proud that I finally learned to value myself. She spent her final months telling me not to shrink myself to make others comfortable. I wish I'd listened sooner. I could hear Vanessa's voice in the background, asking what was happening. My father muttered something I couldn't make out, then came back to the phone. Vanessa wants to talk to you. I don't have anything to say to Vanessa. Rachel, she's part of this family. She's part of your family. She's made that very clear. I took a breath. Dad, I need to go. I have plans today, brunch with friends from last night's party. People who actually want to spend time with me. This is childish, Rachel. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not with fear or sadness. With adrenaline and something that felt like freedom. The phone rang again immediately. I declined the call and sent a text, I need space right now. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk again. Please respect that boundary. Then I silenced his contact and set my phone down. Tara arrived 20 minutes later for our planned brunch debrief. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. You talked to him. I did. I said everything I've needed to say for 12 years. How do you feel? I thought about it carefully. Sad. Relieved. Free. All at the same time. We went to our favorite brunch spot, and I told her everything about the conversation. She listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from anger to sadness to fierce pride. You know what this means, she said finally. You've officially chosen yourself. You've stopped waiting for permission to matter. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a new normal. My father sent several texts attempting to smooth things over without actually addressing anything I'd said. I responded politely but briefly, maintaining the boundary I'd set. Vanessa sent a long message about how hurt they both were by my accusations, and how they hoped I would see reason eventually. I didn't respond at all. The photos from my party became my phone's wallpaper, a reminder of what real community looked like. The book club made our gatherings monthly instead of bi-monthly. Brandon and I started a tradition of celebrating work wins with coffee and honest conversation. Dr. Chen took me to lunch and shared her own story of setting boundaries with difficult family members. It gets easier, she promised. The guilt fades. The clarity remains. 3 months later, in September, my 27th birthday approached. For the first time in years, I didn't feel that familiar dread mixed with hope. I knew exactly what to expect from my father, a text message, maybe a generic card if I was lucky. And I knew it wouldn't devastate me because I'd stopped expecting more. Tara organized a surprise dinner with 15 close friends. When I walked into the private room at the restaurant, everyone shouted, "Surprise," and I felt tears of genuine joy rather than the complicated emotions birthdays usually brought. Dr. Chen gave a toast, to Rachel, who taught us all that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is stop trying to earn love from people who refuse to give it freely. My phone buzzed during dinner, a text from my father. Happy birthday, Rachel. Hope you're doing well. I showed it to Tara, who raised an eyebrow. That's it? That's all? That's all, I confirmed. And you know what? It's enough. Not because it's adequate, but because I don't need more from him anymore. I typed back, thank you. Having a great day with friends. Simple, polite, boundaried. At the end of the night, surrounded by friends who had celebrated me enthusiastically, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I was no longer that girl sitting outside her father's house, watching a party she wasn't invited to and wondering what was wrong with her. I was the woman who had thrown her own party, who had built her own family, who had learned that self-worth doesn't come from other people's validation, even when those people are supposed to love you unconditionally. The hurt didn't disappear completely. Sometimes I still felt the ache of knowing my father had chosen to be present for someone else's childhood after checking out of mine. Sometimes I scrolled through old photos from before my mother died, grieving the father I used to have. But mostly, I felt peace. I had built a life filled with people who showed up for me, work that fulfilled me, and a sense of self-worth that didn't depend on anyone's approval. 6 months after my garden party, I received an invitation in the mail to Declan's 9th birthday celebration. A formal card with a note from Vanessa: "We'd love for you to join us for Declan's special day." It would mean a lot to him to have his big sister there. I held the invitation for a long time, thinking about how to respond. A year ago, I would have been hurt by the late, impersonal invitation. I would have agonized over whether to attend, hoping this might be the event where things finally changed. Now, I simply sent a polite RSVP, "Thank you for the invitation. I have a prior commitment that day, but please wish Declan a happy birthday from me." I didn't have a prior commitment. But I had learned that sometimes the most important commitment is the one you make to yourself, to stop showing up for people who don't show up for you, to stop hoping for different results from the same patterns, to stop sacrificing your peace for relationships that only bring pain. I thought about that girl sitting in her car outside her father's house, heartbroken and invisible. If I could talk to her, I would tell her, "You're not the problem. You never were. And someday soon, you'll throw yourself the most beautiful party, surrounded by people who see you clearly and love you genuinely. You'll learn that chosen family is real family, that self-celebration isn't selfish, and that the most important invitation you'll ever extend is the one that invites yourself to your own life." The journey from excluded daughter to celebrated self wasn't easy or linear. There were still hard days when I missed having a father who was present and proud. There were moments when I saw other families and felt the grief of what I'd lost. But mostly, there was joy. The joy of being surrounded by people who chose me as enthusiastically as I chose them. The joy of celebrating myself without guilt or apology. The joy of knowing that I was enough, exactly as I was, regardless of who failed to see it. I kept the guest book from my garden party on my coffee table, reading through the messages whenever I doubted myself. My favorite entry, written by someone I couldn't identify from the handwriting, simply said, "Tonight I learned that the best revenge is building a beautiful life and inviting the right people to celebrate it with you." That wasn't quite right, though. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation of my joy, my worth, my right to be celebrated. And it was the beginning of understanding that sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is permission to stop waiting for someone else to see your value. I saw it. My chosen family saw it. And that, I had finally learned, was more than enough. Coming up next, you'll see 2 more stories we handpicked just for you. If this one struck a chord, you're going to love what's next. Tap to keep the journey going.